It's the SWP Disciple checking in. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. Not me. My beloved Celtics, though. We got a surprise win with JB sitting out Jaylen Brown with this doesn't bode well with calf tightness, which we know what that means, possible Achilles scare. So he sat this game out with the possibility of sitting out the rest of the season, which of course the rest of the season is, it's only like 8 or 9 more games at this point. I think 8 at this point. But then the problem is, you can throw out the window tracking down Detroit, where they just lose like last night, right? I think actually to the Hawks, who we beat by surprise today. I fully expected to lose this game with the way the Hawks have been playing lately, but and even with Tatum, which has kind of become the norm, kind of expected because he's probably only like 70-80% of himself. Hasn't shot over 50% yet. I think this was like his 9th or 10th game back or so, which seems like a lot of games. It seems like he just came back, but he's already racking the games up. I think he might have sat out 1, so maybe it's like 9 games now or so. Shooting a blistering like 33%. I think he was like 8 for 24. So not only high volume, but like a low percentage. It's crazy. Seems like he's shooting the ball more than he did before. When he was healthy. But there is a certain floor raising to just shooting the ball, even if you're not making it. It keeps the defense honest, and they have to respect you as a threat, right? That's kind of like the I mean, it's not a real term, but it's something that I made up. The Kobe principle, right? That's literally what a lot of people are lauding when they are looking at Kobe, because we know that he was not very efficient. Though if you look at like true shooting, which is like the most charitable way of looking at his efficiency, is like 55%, which is, I think, within like a couple hundredths of a point as efficient as Tim Duncan, who notoriously didn't really get to the line that much, and was, for a big man, I mean, for the era, he was efficient, like just over 50%, but like by historical terms, is just like okay. It's funny what time does. He's still the best power forward ever. If you were to rate him among like big men, like including centers, maybe like number 6 or so. But you look at things a little differently, and the one thing that a lot of like the Kobeeites like to bring up is Kobe was just as efficient as Tim Duncan, which there's like some tomfoolery there with like raw shooting percentage, effective shooting percentage, and then true shooting, which includes free throws, which that was kind of like Kobe's like bread and butter, was like getting to the line, and of course he was like an 83-84% free throw shooter, so that kind of disguises the field shooting. But anyway, this is not an NBA review. I am happy that the Celtics won. I fully expected us to lose tonight though, but I think we won like 109, 102. So you can kind of say that was like a defensive win, right? In today's NBA, 109 points would have you in probably almost like damn near dead last in terms of offense. I think average offense these days is 115 points. So we're like basically at like mid 1980s levels of scoring for different reasons though. So anyway, my life, I'll kind of work backwards, right? So the most prescient thing, or I guess the most like current or important thing right now, is getting back into law school. So I finally sent in my like appeal package or admission package. I went the tough route, yet the easier route. So tough in the sense of like my 1L may be forfeit. So even though I got nothing lower than a C, my 1L, I may be just like wiping all of that and starting all over again. But better to start all over again than to never start again, right? So that might be like, I don't know, like $22,000 down the drain, in addition to a year, which then another year off. So really 2 years. So kind of a total loss in a lot of ways, other than conventional wisdom would suggest that like it'll be easier the second go around, but then I will have kind of like lost everything. But I am an optimist, so it's almost like the children thing, right? So better to have the children late, and even if it's just one, than to not have children at all, assuming that you want children, right? So that would be the worst outcome. Or I guess the worst outcome, I mean, not to be an a-hole about it, would be to maybe have a child late and the child is disabled, right? So you're taking care of them for the rest of your life, right? So I guess there's a whole range of outcomes, but you get what I'm saying. So anyway, I turned that in like a week ago, basically. And the way that this works in general, it's almost like, you're going to, I mean, credit's a little looser than a lot looser than it was, say, like 20, 25 years ago. I remember when I was first starting out and I had either like next to no credit or just bad credit, like almost straight out the gate. I ran up like, some bad debt with credit cards. It's part of the reason why in Massachusetts, at schools, the credit card companies, they can't, try to sell credit card accounts in the lobbies anymore, because like kids were just like getting credit cards and then immediately running up like crazy debts, because we're 17, 18 at oldest as a freshman, like 19 years old. You don't really know how to manage money. I was, for about the first month of school, actually, I was 17 in my freshman year of college. And I remember, like, I think my first card was, I had a Firestone card because my car was always breaking down. So a store card. I had the old trusty, meaning not trusty, Aspire Visa with like 30% interest. And like a low rate, I think, or a low credit limit, like I think it was like $1,000 or maybe $1,500. And then I had Macy's hadn't opened yet in our area, so it was like Filene's, and you can look it up. It's like a kind of a premium clothier, which ended up getting folded into Federation Core, or Federated Core, which is the company behind Macy's. And I had a card there. And like, damn, Disciple, how many cards did you have? Well, I had like 4 pretty much right off the jump. And ran them all up for various reasons. A lot of it is like, tricking on girls, dates. My car was always breaking down, so the Firestone card ran up pretty much immediately. And as it would, as luck or misfortune would have it, store credit cards, they tend to give you a much more generous limit than, say, like your regular like unsecured credit card, because of course it's tied to the store, so they want you to shop more there. And I think it was like a $3,000 or $4,000 limit, which is like a lot in like 1997, 98. I'm trying to remember the 4th card. I know it was 4 cards. I can't remember what the 4th card was off the top of my head. I think it was another like garden variety, like MasterCard or Visa. The Aspire sticks out because it was such a high rate. And then I think they briefly changed the laws maybe a few years later, where in Massachusetts anyway, interest rates couldn't be any higher than I think like 24, 25%, which is still high, but certainly not 30%. I think in recent years, maybe under Mitt Romney, it might have loosened up again. And I know that I've seen some credit card offers that were like 31.49% or something like that, or whatever. Of course, I have many cards. I only use one, and it's like a rotating limit. I actually just did a balance transfer. But again, this is just as this is not a ESPN report. This is not a Dave Ramsey or anything like that, or a personal finance report. I'm just kind of like setting the table. So yeah, so that's pending. But like I was gonna say, much like when you're applying for credit for a car, and that if you go into the showroom, and if the financial office is taking too long to find you a bank that'll finance you, chances are you're probably not gonna get financed, or you're gonna get a really crappy rate. So in the reverse, it's been like a week or so. I know, after having been through this I guess rigmarole or charade or whatever last summer, that I got answers like no's pretty quickly. So if it's taking a while, that's probably positive. It doesn't mean anything necessarily, but probably a good thing. Oh, sorry, I sneezed. I hope, right? Better than a quick no, right? Slow no is better than a quick no, and obviously a slow yes is better than both of them. So that's the one thing that's on my table. I guess that would be kind of like mediocre news. Bad news. I think I had mentioned I was kind of like talking to a girl in St. Louis. It was like a hookup through a friend of a friend. I won't go through all that. Maybe at another time when I have kind of like a better epilogue and I have reflected on it, because it literally just happened like last week. I saw her towards the end of last year. Obviously with a heavy heart, like I got that other situation, but much like an abducted child, the longer the child is away, the less chance of recovery. Sorry to be morbid. And then kind of parallel with that, another friend, I guess we're not friends anymore. This has happened before, so I'm hoping there's like a recovery with her, but I don't know, it feels a little different this time. Let's just say a special friend of mine in just a couple states over, like not too far away, she stopped talking to me. So they tie in together. Like what do you like, schizoid or something? Disciple? No, they tie in together. So, and I think I mentioned this before. So we're really good friends. We talk about a lot of things. You know, we've been friends now since like 2012 on the heels of the situation with T, which kind of, you know, in the earlier years, like that was like maybe like the second or third year of the channel. It ties in very closely with like the earlier years, the proto years of this channel, and that's kind of what our friendship was born out of. Like, she was very supportive, and then we just struck up a fast friendship, and you know, through a lot of things, you know, different relationships I've had, heartache. She got married at one point, and you know, was divorced pretty soon after. I won't get all into our business, but it matters in our storyline. So anyway, you know, I have like my little like schemes, right, where I like open a bank account just so I can get the free money, and you know, you usually have to deposit like $1,000. Sorry, I sneezed again. I just got over a cold too. I don't think I'm coming down with one, but that doesn't bode well. And yeah, you know, I gave my requisite like, you know, $1,500 in direct deposits over like 2 months, 3 months, whatever, and then they give you like a bonus of like $300, $400, whatever. I have various ones. Usually I won't do it for less than say $200, but I've been rewarded with as much as like say $450, and then I'll keep them open, but I'll just, you know, kind of like trickle in just a little money here and there just to keep the account going, because some of them will say, well, this account's dead, what's going on, we're about to close it or whatever. So anyway, and they're good because they give you preferential treatment for like credit cards, whatever, other things down the road. And I use them just kind of for moving money around, and it's a nice covert way of saving money. So I'll have like a bunch of accounts where I'll transfer in maybe like $15 per pay period, right? So like, call it twice a month, but I've got like 12 to 15 of these. I think it's like 15 of these accounts. So, you know, you can do the addition there, the multiplication. So usually at the end of the year, I'll like liquidate them all and then start all over again. And, you know, I have a nice little, like, just a covert, like $2,000 that I wasn't really paying attention to. And that's like a nice little strategy, right? So anyway, I was just kind of like, you know, not bragging, just like telling her about like a nice little win. I was like, yeah, I just liquidated my accounts or whatever. And like, I just opened this Chime account, and you know, they're going to give me like $150 for 3 months consecutive or whatever it was, or something like that. And then she like flipped it on me, like out of nowhere. Like, we were on good terms, like we were fine, you know, we're chatting every day or every other day, just about whatever, red pill stuff and life and politics. She's actually like a conservative, but like, I don't really know why, but I'm not going to get into all that. And then she's like, oh, you're bragging, you need to like come up off some money, in so many words. She's like, and then I was like, what do you mean? I kind of earned it. Like, you know, I direct deposited $1,500. I wasn't bragging, I was just kind of happy or whatever, right? And again, one of those things, like, I mean, you already know what this is, right? When a girl fundamentally doesn't like you, and I'm talking like, you know, romantic, like, just every once in a while they'll chin check you and kind of present some resistance, so as to either like you'll comply, or, you know, it's no skin off of their back, they didn't really like you fundamentally like that anyway, at least not romantically, and they can just like, you know, end the relationship. And it was like one of those, and it's happened before and we recovered, but at this point now we haven't spoken since like the end of last year, and we're quickly approaching April of this year, right, of 2026. So it's been, you know, approaching, I guess, just say 3 months, 3+ months. So, you know, then she sent me like a link to like this Coach purse, nothing crazy, it was like a $230 purse, and I'm like, what'd you send me this for? She's like, well, you need to get me this for Christmas. And I'm like, no. Like, even repeating it sounds ridiculous, but, you know, she was apparently as serious as a heart attack, or like I said, it was just a ploy as like, you know, to make her exit because maybe she was just sick of talking to me. Who knows, right? Sorry, I gotta wipe my nose here. That just came out of nowhere. I was like fine just a moment ago. I really hope I'm not coming down with anything, because I just got over a cold. So whatever, like, you know, it became like a staring contest. I kind of like, again, like this has happened before in the past, so I just kind of, and I'm going somewhere with this, kind of ignored it. I would still send like, you know, little YouTube links or IG links, and then finally she was like, why are you sending me this? Are you ready to send me some money or send me that purse? And I'm like, well, no, that's crazy. Like, I mean, do you like me? Are we talking? Are we together? Whatever. And then no answer. She's like, you know, give me my money or stop talking to me. Like literally like that. That's almost verbatim. And I guess so said, so done. We haven't spoken since. That was like the very end of last year, I believe, or maybe at most early January, but I'm pretty sure it was like right around Christmas time, December. Actually, I know it was around Christmas time, December, because it ties directly into it. And obviously, I'm hoping she comes back. Like, I like her as a person. Obviously, as you might be able to tell, I've known her for 14 years or so at this point. And, at various points, we've gone on 2 dates, if you want to call it that, in New York City years ago, like in 2014, 2016. There was 2 dates, and they were both in New York City. There's more I want to say, but it kind of doesn't really add to the story, at least not right now. So anyway, I'm very much like a turn lemons into lemonade type of guy, whatever. So, I'm talking to this girl in St. Louis. It was my friend, my long time friend, of 26 years, going back to undergrad. And, she's married to a woman now, but, she's still my dear friend. As a matter of fact, she just called me a moment ago, before I turned the camera on, because literally, right now, she's probably still in the showroom right now. Her wife is in a Nissan showroom now. Of course, they're in Texas, so they're an hour behind. I mean, maybe at this point they're gone, because it would be 9:22 over there. It's 10:22 here. I've been driving for a little bit. She was in a Nissan dealership, about to buy a new Pathfinder. So, of course, we get in. I'm on the elliptical at the gym. It gets into a conversation. She knows that I can talk too much, and she's like, I just want a yes or no. Because we had just spoke for an hour yesterday or whatever while I was working in the lab. We talk often because she's my bestie. And she called me to ask about gap insurance. So literally her wife is signing on the dotted line about to buy this Nissan Pathfinder. Now, as I always say, unless you're buying an enthusiast car and you're just buying kind of a regular, get around vehicle, and I think her wife is coming out of, I want to say, a Nissan Rogue. Don't quote me on that, because I don't pay attention to regular cars like that. Now my friend, she drives a Tacoma, upon my urging. That sounds very much like a disciple recommendation. I told her again, when in doubt, and if you're driving a non-enthusiast vehicle, so in other words, unless you're married to the, no pun intended, married to the vehicle, and you're buying a sports car or something like that, you should just get a Toyota, because it's going to be reliable. It's going to hold its value more than the normal blah 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 whatever. And then she was like, all right, damn all that. She's about to sign on the dotted line. It's basically bought. This is basically consummated. I just want to know, should she get gap insurance? It's going to be an additional $30 a month. And then, again, I was like, it's not really a yes or no question, because gap insurance, you buy it if the car is high depreciation. Nissans are high depreciation, unless you're buying a GTR. It's going to be high depreciation. So the answer is yes. And you can usually cancel it after a couple years or so. So I told her, yes, get it, because that Pathfinder that she's buying for about $45,000 right now is going to be worth closer to 33 in a year, and closer to 28, maybe as low as $25,000 in 2 years. So in other words, if you get into an accident and it's totaled, the bank is going to pay out what it's worth, but you're still going to owe a lot on it. So yes, get it. And then, she took my advice. So she told her to get the gap insurance. But anyway, where was I going with that? Yeah. So yeah, she tried. The other friend tried. I don't know where I was going with that. I was going that way for a reason. But anyway, wanted me to get this Coach bag. It's actually a cute bag, and it's relatively expensive in the realm of bags, right? It's not like a Louis Vuitton, I forget the names of them now, but I feel like the cheapest one's $2,400 or so. So it's nothing like that. Of course, society's kind of moved in a different direction. And about 25 years ago, if you bought a girl a Coach purse, that was oh damn, this is wifey. Now it's just a token to extend them even talking to you, as it were, right? So anyway, the other girl that I'm talking to in St. Louis, she actually apparently is a giver, right? I got my Christmas present, as it were. I didn't even realize that we're exchanging Christmas presents. I thought I was actually going to simp, the dreaded S word. I was going to get her a Christmas present thinking she wasn't expecting one, and then she'd see oh, disciple, you shouldn't have. And I actually stole the idea of my friend, or former friend, or however you want to look at it, the same bag that she suggested. Of course, I'm on my grown man, right? So I can't get her a $50 or $60 present. It has to be, something substantial, while not, taking yourself to the cleaner. So I literally, and I'm a very frequent Macy's buyer. That's where I get all my Polo and stuff. So, I had some discounts. I had a gift card that I was sitting on for $60 or whatever. So I got her the purse, thinking I was going to surprise her. And but it was on back order. Apparently it's like the hottest thing right now. It was on back order for like 2 months essentially. And lo and behold, like a week before Christmas, I got a present from, this girl, and it was a nice Christian Dior gift set. And I could see the price. It was like around approaching like $200. Of course, cologne is so overpriced now, whatever. And I was kind of impressed. And then, she got hers. It was on back order, but somehow they got like an allocation, and she got it like maybe like 3 weeks later. So instead of having to wait like 2 months, she got the purse like 3 weeks later, and she was very happy with it, blah, blah, blah. So all's well that ends well. And again, I took lemons and turned it into lemonade. I took an idea that was basically leveraged against me and used that to buy the new girl. And I thought, obviously I still have a heavy heart about my ex from 3 years ago, but like, damn it, you gotta put one foot in front of the other and start, keep it pushing. So, all right, so here's where the meat of the story starts at the 20-minute mark. I gotta find a way to stop yapping so much, but that all set everything up for a reason. So we're doing pretty good, and then life just starts happening. So she has a pretty substantial like feminine surgery. I won't get into it. Obviously that's, hip and all that. The girl that I'm talking to in St. Louis. And, as you might imagine, every little thing, even as you're talking every day and like, trying to keep things like lively and light or whatever, I noticed that she was like, kind of going to bed earlier. Obviously she's like a little weaker because she's recovering from surgery and all that. And whatever, like, it's cool. It's like a fairly routine, I mean, can I say, no, I'm not going to get into what it was, but like she was expected like 100% recovery. Now, she used to be in the military and actually was discharged, honorably discharged. It's actually part of the reason why she is in such a good position financially, because like she has like a pretty good like pension because of an injury that she suffered in the military, like a back injury. So, and it started to flare up to the point where it was like she couldn't really get into a good sleeping position or sit upright and all that, blah, blah, blah. Like, now she still works like for the VA and stuff like that. Like she's not an invalid, but like, again, kind of like death by 1,000 paper cuts. Every little thing matters, right? So going to bed a little earlier, a little lower energy. She went on a trip to the motherland, to Africa, with some friends. It wasn't as good a trip as she wanted it to be. It wasn't terrible. She actually like video chatted me and WhatsApped me while she was over there. And the back end of the trip, I think she was there for like the better part of 2 weeks. The last few days, I guess, were better, but it wasn't because of the company that she went with. When I say company, I don't mean like business, but like the friends or kind of like friend adjacent that she went with. I guess she had not traveled with them before and kind of didn't really know their bedside manner, and it wasn't like, how women can be. I don't want to say catty because I don't want to be like sexist, but like, it just kind of got like not as harmonious as it could have been. Let's just say that. Again, little things that just kind of erode things. But then here are the two big pieces. So my best friend, like my bestie, unfortunately, his father passed. I think I had hinted at that. Who was also like a father to me. So that's like a loss to me as well, not just him. And I feel like I handled it as well as you could. As it relates to like the relationship or this budding situation or whatever you want to call it. Again, I saw her out in St. Louis late last year. We hit it off, had a great time. So much so that like, I was being a gentleman. I got a hotel and everything like that. And like on the second day, she's like, you can check out of that hotel. You can stay with me. Again, I wasn't presumptuous and everything. I kept it all above board. I mean, you know how I am. I operate slow. Had a great time. We were texting every day. I would give her like a nice long conversation or two a week. You know how much I'm averse to the phone because my job is phone based, but I would still give her like a good hour long or two conversation at least once or twice a week, in addition to like our normal contacts and sending each other memes and videos and everything like that. And she's like, oh, I really like that, via Instagram and all that. So anyway, we're experiencing a little adversity, like normal life stuff, a death in the family, so to speak. I mean, not even so to speak. The man was like my father in a lot of ways. She had a surgery. She had a kind of a bad trip, which I can understand why that would kind of sour your mood a little bit, because I can't imagine her spending less than like a couple grand to go to Ghana, right? And then no one spends a couple grand and like all that travel and everything like that to not have a good time. But then the other part that really damaged things was a friend of hers, one of her military friends, and I can tell it was like a close friend, suddenly passed from an aneurysm. And then she had to, like, on a dime, just travel. I don't know if you can hear my snap there. Take a flight out to Texas, which isn't that far from Missouri, by the time she went out there, it was like maybe like 3 weeks to the better part of a month later. But it was just as I was scheduled to go and see her again in February. And then I kind of read the room, and I could tell, like, she just wasn't the same. She started to kind of slow down. The contact, it was there, like, I got the good morning text or whatever, but it wasn't the same energy when we were talking and everything like that. And I just called it, and I was like, you know what? I can tell that you're going through some stuff, understandably. I'm sure my energy's not the same because, I have this memorial and this funeral coming up for someone who's, like, really, really important to me or whatever. And we're both going through it. So you know what? I'm just going to postpone it. I'll eat the flight cost. I was able to kind of, like, I usually fly Delta. Because I have an account with them, they and even though it was economy, usually you just sacrifice the flight, but they just kind of docked me $100 and they allowed me to keep the rest of the credit, like $250 or whatever it was. And whatever, I ate it, and she was like, that's, very kind of you, blah, blah, blah. Because, like, basically she was saying, like, I'm glad you called it because I was going to kind of, like, suffer through it even though I wasn't really ready to see you right now with everything that's going on. And so, I mean, you got, like, a surgery, a bad trip, 2 deaths happening basically concurrently. So it's really kind of like dimming the lights in the room. So anyway, I rescheduled it for this month. In fact, it was supposed to be this Thursday. I was supposed to be in Missouri right now. So fast forward to now, last week, Tuesday, I'm driving back from Toronto. I see the text come through, and then I could tell just by the first line, by, like, kind of like the thumbnail, like I wasn't reading it because I was driving. I later, like, pulled over to read the whole thing, and it started with, like, hi disciple, which she never, obviously we have a rapport going, so it would be more like hey, or hey there, whatever endearing term that you at this point, 3-4 months into it, that you would give each other. I guess it would be like 4 months into it. So I know once it starts getting more formal that it's not good news. And it's like I've been thinking. I pull over, and it's like, I've been thinking, you're a very nice guy, blah 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 blah. It's funny how much in life, when you're told that you're a nice guy, it's always at the worst of times, and it's not good news, right? It's never like a compliment, right? I can't remember. I can probably count on one hand the amount of times I've been told that I was like a good person or a nice guy, and it was like in the context of, like, bonus points for disciple. So anyway, she doesn't, like, read me the riot act, but, like, it's kind of like, in so many words, like, I've been thinking, and then she says, like, our lives are not in alignment. And then something about my communication, that's the one that really stuck out to me, because, like, obviously she's got to kind of stick a jab, like a insert weapon here, a knife into the side, like, your communication patterns. I don't know if it's because I didn't call her enough or what, and I ran it by my best friend. I think that's what I was mentioning her for. My best friend, out in Texas, whose wife is shopping for a Nissan Pathfinder, against my recommendation. But anyway, I ran it by her. We were talking about that while I was working in the lab last night. She's like, "Oh yeah, if I'm talking to somebody, I need to hear your voice. I need to talk to you every day or whatever." Blah blah. And I'm like, who the hell has time to have like an hour-long conversation every day? I barely have enough time to get the stuff done that I do now. But whatever. I mean, that's not what this video is about. And she said something about communication patterns, but the long and short of it is, I think after a while, she was like, all right, so you're in Massachusetts, I'm in Missouri. I remember kind of like, at this point, a couple months ago, like, it's been a while, she was like, yeah, I want to be, like, married this year or on my way to being married. Now, obviously, we're heading in towards the 4th month of the year. We could make it serious. I was heading that way to, like, really fully exploring it, which is very much unlike me, right? So I've self-sabotaged because I was, like, mourning previous situations for, like, many months, if not a year or two, which at this point I'm in 3 years into it. And there's, like, no signs of a return. This is all just wishful thinking and, hope springing eternal type of thing. The other option, I don't want to say it that way, option in that sense, because I don't, take any of this for granted or anything like that. The other very viable, like, situation I was looking towards was my friend in Pennsylvania who tried to shake me down for a bag. I'll come back to that, which obviously that's off the table right now. But anyway, so, she says that, and then, pretty soon after, because I have, like, at this point, like, another 5 hours of driving ahead of me. So I call her. She doesn't pick up. She's like, I'll call you soon. This is heading. So we kind of, it was never a phone tag, but I guess you could say text tag. So she's like, can I call you now? But I'm, like, in the middle of something. I'm, like, on the basketball court, or I'm in the middle of work. And I'm like, oh, yeah, you can call me later at this time, blah, blah, blah. And then I had something else come up. But, like, legitimate stuff. It's not like I'm putting it off. Like, I had other stuff I had to handle. And we finally, like, kind of get to a point where I text her. Again, this just happened last Tuesday. So it's only been, what is that, like 10 days or so? 11 days at most. And I'm like, all right, yeah, you can call me now. Now it's like, I'm sure in her mind, she's like, I've extended the olive branch enough. I'm not telling you anything. I'm not giving you any, like, epilogue conversation or whatever. And then just yesterday, this just happened. Was it yesterday or the day before? Things took a dark turn, and I could see it. I just happened to be, taking a trip down memory lane, seeing if I could find something, and I'm looking at, like, old messages in the IG DMs or in my text messages, and I can see it says will not update, and I'm like, obviously my heart starts to sink, and then I'm trying to, like, fight through it and scroll down. It's like will not update, and then I jump out and then jump back in. She didn't block me, but it's private, so she unfriended me and did the same on Facebook. Hasn't done that on LinkedIn, but I'm sure that's coming, right? So, and she said it in the text. That's the other thing. She was like, I think I don't see us in a relationship. I see us more as, like, platonic friends. And then the sad part is, before, against my better judgment, it was actually a friend of a friend that kind of prodded me and said, like, yeah, we'll just call her A. She's kind of like, she's kind of looking at you. You should make a move. We were friends, at least through Instagram for, like, a year before. It was, like, August of 2024, because I scrolled all the way back. So we literally, like, are in a worse position than we were to begin with. Like, I would have been fine just keeping it where it was. Obviously, like, every situation is, like, kind of like a lesson in a sense, and it teaches you something. And I'm sure I'm too close to it now. I'm sure there's, like, some benefit or whatever, some good that came from it. But, like, I literally, I guess, burned a bridge, because, like, she didn't say a lot in that text. Like, it was a decent paragraph, but it was just, again, I don't know what she means by our communication patterns or whatever. That's the primary reason why I want to have that last conversation with her, if that's what it's going to be. But she did say that she sees us as platonic friends. And I did mention it in my text, but I was like, going to save it for a full-scale conversation, which apparently she was willing to have at first, and then now she's just like, all right, no. I don't know if it's because maybe I responded too much, or she saw me in her stories and she's like, you know what, this is probably not a good idea. I rescind the friendship that I offered or whatever, or trying to, scale things back to where they were. And of course, my dumb luck, I, fat fingered, my phone, and then called her, like, video chatted or whatever by mistake. I didn't mean to, and then quickly hung up, but I'm sure it went through. So she's like, now I got a bugaboo or whatever. Like, it's not like I hit her up a bunch, but, like, when you're in that mind frame, I'm sure she's looking for any reason to just kind of, like, walk away. It does kind of have the feeling of, like, she might have met someone and she wants to explore it, and, like, you can't serve two masters type of thing. Again, things had been getting weird before she called it. Things have been getting kind of weird, like, maybe a week and a half prior. But again, there's the ebb and flow. There was something to point to, right? We had 2 deaths, a major enough surgery, a bad transcontinental trip, and then also, we'd gotten to some, like, political debates. Now, of course, she kind of gave me the line of, I'm not a Democrat or Republican, which usually means that you're a conservative. But then there's certain things, I don't want to get too much into her business. There's, like, a really, like bedrock thing, let's just say. I mean, you can read between this the way you want to, that, that she had happen in her life, let's just say, right? That you kind of either fall on one side of the aisle or the other. That would lead me to believe that, all right, so she's kind of a liberal like I am. And then she would also kind of complain about, she was looking for a new job, even though her job wasn't under threat. But of course, with all the shakeups in the government, by the orange man, she was kind of afraid that she might get, laid off. As we know, there's a lot of black women who've been laid off in the government, even if it's, like, military adjacent, like, working in the VA or whatever, who've lost positions that due to them trimming the fat, as it were, even as they explode the debt, the deficit and debt. So she was kind of like, her cage was kind of rattled by that. So she's been like looking for a job, even though technically she's not under threat of losing her job. But of course, life comes at you fast. Anything can happen. So a lot happening. I think my belly aching a little low key about, I didn't think I did, but like I'm sure in her mind I was, about law school and getting back in. And I tried to keep the complaints to a minimum about like anything else, but I'm sure to her it's like, all right, so you're in a sense unstable and you're bound to staying in the Northeast. She was very adamant about moving, but like not moving to the Northeast because of high cost of living, yada, yada, yada. I'm sure if it was like, all right, you got like this like slam bang job, she can live anywhere and still work from home, whatever. But based on what she was saying, she was like looking to maybe move somewhere like either staying in the South. I mean, Missouri's not the South, but you know what I mean, culturally. Or she mentioned like Denver, Colorado, which isn't cheap to live, but certainly not Massachusetts. But of course, I'm bound here because to the extent that I'm getting back into school, I'm gonna still be here. So I guess she might have weighed a lot of that. I mean, that's just me kind of granting the devil his due as much as possible and being as charitable as possible in terms of her view. It could also be like, all right, this is not really going anywhere because you're far away. I can't do the long distance thing much longer than the 4 months we've already done. And it doesn't appear that you're going to be moving anytime soon. And even if I moved up there, it's probably not going to be really consummated for a couple years. Oddly enough, she didn't really seem very married to the idea of having children. She basically, her idea of having children is like strictly if she's going to be, with someone, like, married, and if not, she can take it or leave it. Now, of course, the other shoe is that, like, she has a large enough family. Her genes have been passed down through her brothers and sisters or whatever, right? It's not like me where I'm an only child and the buck stops here. And she doesn't have that burning desire. And she would always say, like, if we go forward, this is, a division of labor type of house she wants, yada, yada. She was actually more focused on getting to like that kind of like life of leisure and like, traveling the world and kind of having a partner in that vein, not so much in terms of like kingdom building, like we're going to have 2.5 children and, and a dog and all that. As a matter of fact, she has 2 cats and she was like, I really think that, once my cats pass, I don't think I'm going to like get another pet. So she was like kind of like on, I'm not even going to put a word to it, but like, kind of on like, living a soft life and very much focused on where her dollar's going to extend. The irony of it of like, having served in the military, but like not particularly patriotic in that sense. She was like, yeah, I'm totally want to be an expat and maybe move to like Southeast Asia, and apparently already has some family there and, somewhere where her money will really extend. And she was already laid out like, this is what my pension is going to be. Like, she was basically breaded, certainly compared to me, a lot more money than I do. Even as my earnings are going the other way, like I didn't get a raise, and like, I'm going to be cutting hours if I do get back into school, whatever, at least for the next couple of years. So sorry to like say so much, but it's all germane to the topic. So maybe you're listening to this and you're like, yeah, you just kind of weren't the guy for her or whatever, but it definitely got dark, and it seems almost like she just doesn't want anything to do with me, even though there was no issue, like there was no fight. We seemed to get along great. I guess there were like maybe a few, now that I'm talking it out, maybe a few logistical things. But the more I talk about it, it does sound like maybe she's entertaining someone else. And obviously being, 1,500 miles away, it would be hard to maintain that unless I'm going to see her every month, type of thing. Or she's coming up here, which the door is open. She could have come up to visit, but, it is what it is. It sucks. It wasn't to the level of, my ex in New Jersey, or even, my friend in Pennsylvania, in terms of like roots established and like, that like long history or whatever. But like, I did like her. Like I saw there was definitely a pathway to having a really nice future, but that's what it is. And then I even after that, like, I let it marinate for a few days, and I was like, not to be obtuse, but like, I'm not going to be refunded for I didn't say it like, oh damn, I'm out like another $300 because I flew American this time. And of course, I kept getting the pings and the reminders of like, your gate's about to leave, yada, yada, yada. And I was like, the money's spent one way or the other. Are you sure you don't want me to come out there? And she's like, I thought I was clear in my message. No, I don't want you to come out here, whatever. And again, we were fine, but then shortly after that, she was like, all right, so this guy's an idiot or something like that. I didn't do anything. I was just literally just trying to be as crystal clear as possible. You know, you figure, especially when it's fresh, that there's always a way of kind of salvaging it. After all, there was no, no infidelity, not that we were like 100% solid and together, but like, I was entertaining just her. But whatever, I tried my best, I thought. So yeah, there we are now. So I'm kind of like back to terra firma, kind of back to like my original, I guess, sadness. I guess in addition to the situation in Pennsylvania, the irony of it all. That's kind of what I was building to, and I'll just wrap here at 40 minutes. I didn't expect it to be this long. I wanted it to be quick, but there was a lot that I had to get through. I'm trying to talk quickly, but I guess sometimes things take as long as they do. The irony of it all, as much as, my friend in Pennsylvania was kind of, low-key being like a bad actor, I would have been better suited buying her a bag or 5 bags, even if it was leading to nothing, and just for the privilege, in quotation marks, of us still talking and just being a simp. I would have been better off doing that than, going the route, with A in Missouri. Of course, I don't have a crystal ball. There is a reason why we don't have crystal balls, because life wouldn't be the adventure that it is, right? We'd all eat kale and eat granola and drink water, and only entertain the women that are entertaining us, or even if they're just around just to talk to us and to use us from time to time. We wouldn't get we'd have the advantage of the protection of that, as opposed to the girl who's pretending to be into us, and then like cold turkey, whenever they feel like, well, that was a nice snap, they're just going to exit stage left or whatever. That would have been better protection, right? Because I'd spent substantial money, if you figure, like, the couple flights, and of course when I went down there, we went to a couple nice restaurants. The bag, got her flowers on Valentine's Day, etc. Probably spent at least over a rack, just to maintain and do what we were doing or whatever, not to mention the opportunity cost and all that, and then the emotion and everything else or whatever. Yeah, such is life. So back to square one, but oddly, significantly worse off than I was, say, in October, before it all started. But I guess that is life, right? I'm sure the lesson is in there somewhere. I probably won't know what the lesson is until 2028 or something like that. But back to the original sadness, and actually plus 2, right? So 3 times the sadness. If this were a legal case and you were getting punitive damages against you, we would call these treble damages, 3 times damages. But anyway, hopefully there's a lesson in there for you somewhere. But just updating you. And now I'm starved. It is 10:49, and I'm a head my black behind home. I might get some food on the way. I don't really feel for what's in my refrigerator, except for the salad, just to keep myself honest. But I guess the one benefit of today is the Celtics got a surprise win. We by all rights, lost to the Hawks, but we won. I hope that doesn't mean that we have like a kind of like an scheduled loss in these last 8-9 games. But anyway, in all things give thanks, right? The Lord is faithful. Stay with me. God bless.